Carl Jung believed that the human mind is not just a product of logic, but a battlefield between the conscious and unconscious, between the light we admit and the shadow we deny. And when it came to understanding women, Jung uncovered truths that were not only hidden, but deeply unsettling. Truths about instincts, emotions, and desires that operate beyond conscious control. These are not judgments. They are psychological realities. And to ignore them is to misunderstand half of the human race. Jung argued that every psyche contains two great forces, the anima and the animus. In men, the anima is the unconscious feminine side, the emotional, instinctive, intuitive force they often try to repress. In women, the animus is the unconscious masculine side, the drive toward independence, dominance, rationality. Most people never notice these forces within them, yet they shape behaviors, choices, and relationships in ways no one can control. Here's the hidden truth. Much of what drives a woman's mind is not her conscious thoughts, but her unconscious archetypes. Jung believed that women are deeply influenced by instinctual patterns carried through the collective unconscious, patterns older than civilization itself. A woman may believe she is choosing freely, but often she is acting out an archetype: the mother, the lover, the huntress, the queen. These forces emerge from the shadow, shaping her desires and fears before she can rationalize them. This is why Jung insisted that psychology must go deeper than surface explanations. If you look only at what a woman says, you miss the undercurrent of what she feels. If you look only at what she chooses, you miss the unconscious forces shaping those choices. She may claim independence, yet be haunted by the archetype of the nurturer. She may pursue power, yet feel the pull of surrender. These contradictions are not hypocrisy. They are the reality of the unconscious at work. The most unsettling part of Jung's insight is this: women, like men, cannot fully control these forces. They may suppress them, disguise them, even deny them. But the unconscious always finds expression. Sometimes it surfaces in dreams, sometimes in sudden emotions, sometimes in choices that make no rational sense. Jung called this the autonomy of the unconscious. It moves on its own, with or without permission. Think about desire. A woman may tell herself she desires one type of man, the safe, stable, predictable one. And yet she finds herself drawn to the dangerous, unpredictable one instead. Why? Because her conscious mind and her unconscious are not in agreement. One seeks security, the other seeks excitement. And no matter how much she rationalizes, the unconscious often wins. This does not make her weak. It makes her human. Jung would remind us, men experience the same war with their anima. But in women, the animus and the shadow play out differently, giving rise to mysteries men often cannot comprehend. This is the hidden truth Jung revealed. Much of what frustrates men about women is not something women choose. It is something that lives in the unconscious, older than both. Men ask, why does she say one thing but do another? Jung's answer, because her psyche is not a single voice. It is a chorus of voices, many of them hidden. Men demand consistency, but the unconscious thrives on contradiction. And contradiction is part of the feminine mind. Yet Jung did not view this as a flaw. He saw it as a source of richness, creativity, and life itself. The unconscious feminine is not bound by rigid logic. It flows, transforms, adapts. What she can't control is also what makes her mysterious, magnetic, and alive. The very unpredictability that frustrates men is what gives women depth. But if a woman refuses to accept her shadow, if she denies her unconscious desires, they will rule her from the dark. Jung gave a warning here. The shadow of the feminine, once denied, becomes dangerous. A woman who represses her instincts may erupt in sudden chaos. A woman who denies her desires may become consumed by resentment. A woman who refuses to confront her animus may become cold, rigid, and tyrannical. The unconscious cannot be destroyed. It can only be integrated. This is why Jung believed that women, like men, must embark on individuation, the process of making the unconscious conscious. Until then, she is a prisoner of what she cannot control. Only by facing the shadow can she gain freedom from it. And here lies the paradox. The parts of her psyche she cannot control are also the parts that hold her greatest power. Her intuition, her passion, her emotional depth. These are forces men often lack. They make her unpredictable, yes, but also irreplaceable. Jung would argue that men fear this unpredictability not because it is irrational, but because it reminds them of their own unconscious, the anima they work so hard to deny. So, the hidden truth Jung uncovered about the mind of women is not simply that it is mysterious. It is that its mystery is rooted in forces beyond conscious control. To understand a woman is to accept that she cannot always explain herself, that her choices are not always logical, that her mind is not always unified. And to love her is to embrace that contradiction rather than demand it disappear. Jung taught that every person carries a shadow, the part of themselves they deny, suppress, or refuse to face. And in women, just as in men, the shadow plays a powerful role. But Jung warned that when the feminine shadow is ignored, it doesn't disappear. It grows. It becomes more influential, more destructive, more controlling, until it erupts in ways even the woman herself cannot understand. This is why Jung said the feminine mind cannot be understood only by logic or reason. To truly understand it, one must study the shadow. So, what is the feminine shadow? It is not a single thing. It is a collection of instincts, desires, and emotions that women are often told they shouldn't have. Anger, jealousy, lust, ambition, the desire for control, the craving for freedom. These are forces that society has historically rejected in women, branding them as unacceptable, dangerous, or shameful. And so, women bury them. They hide their anger to be seen as kind. They suppress their desire to be seen as pure. They deny their ambition to be seen as humble. But the unconscious does not obey repression. What is buried does not die. It waits. And when it finally returns, it often does so in distorted, destructive forms. A woman who represses her anger may erupt in sudden, explosive rage. A woman who denies her desire may act on it recklessly. A woman who suppresses her ambition may sabotage others in secret. This is the feminine shadow, the side of the psyche that, once denied, finds its own way to the surface. Jung believed this was not unique to women. It happens to men as well. But in women, the shadow often reveals itself in ways men cannot predict, because it emerges from unconscious archetypes that men do not share. A man may struggle with aggression, but a woman's shadow may cloak that aggression in subtle manipulation, emotional withdrawal, or passive resistance. A man may openly pursue dominance, while a woman's shadow may pursue it indirectly, through charm, seduction, or silent control. The methods differ, but the truth remains. The shadow is always acting. This is why Jung said women often appear contradictory to men. On the surface, she may seem gentle, nurturing, compliant. But beneath, her shadow may be hungry for power, freedom, or passion. These are not lies. They are two sides of the same psyche. And the hidden truth is that women themselves often feel torn between these sides. Their conscious values pull one way, their unconscious shadow pulls another. And the shadow is strong enough to overturn reason. Relationships are where the feminine shadow often reveals itself most clearly. Jung observed that women are drawn not only to what they consciously want in a man, but also to what their unconscious demands. A woman may say she wants stability, yet her shadow craves intensity. She may choose the good man, but her shadow is restless for the dangerous one. This contradiction confuses men, but for Jung, it was inevitable. The unconscious always seeks its own fulfillment. This is why Jung warned that relationships are never between two people alone. They are between two psyches, two shadows, two unconscious worlds colliding. A woman may love with her conscious self, but betray with her shadow. She may stay in a relationship she consciously dislikes because her shadow finds meaning in it. She may leave a man she consciously loves because her shadow craves what he cannot give. What she cannot control often decides her choices more than what she can. But Jung did not stop at relationships. He believed that the feminine shadow also shaped society itself. Throughout history, women were forced into roles that denied half of their psyche. They were told to be mothers, but not lovers, caretakers, but not leaders, supportive, but never ambitious. And so, the collective feminine shadow grew darker. The very forces society tried to repress in women. Sexuality, power, independence emerged anyway, often into disruptive waves. Jung would say that feminism itself, with its sudden and radical shifts, was not simply a movement of conscious choice. It was the shadow of the feminine, rising after centuries of suppression. Here lies the danger Jung saw. When women refuse to acknowledge their shadow, they become controlled by it. Instead of choosing their power consciously, they act it out unconsciously. Instead of directing their passion, they become consumed by it. Instead of owning their ambition, they sabotage or resent. The unconscious always demands expression, if not in healthy ways, then in destructive ones. But Jung also saw potential here. He believed that within the feminine shadow lies enormous power, intuition, creativity, resilience, and the energy of transformation. When a woman accepts her shadow instead of denying it, she becomes whole. Her anger becomes the fire that fuels her independence. Her desire becomes the energy of creation. Her ambition becomes the drive to lead. Her contradictions turn into complexity, not chaos. This is why Jung encouraged women not to run from their shadow, but to face it. Because the truth is, what women cannot control in their unconscious is not only danger, it is also power. To integrate the shadow is to reclaim strength. To deny it is to be ruled by it. So the hidden truth Jung revealed is this: the mind of a woman is not a single, unified force. It is a dance between light and shadow, conscious and unconscious, control and chaos. Men may struggle to understand it, but women themselves often struggle even more, because their deepest drives are not chosen, but inherited from the archetypes of the collective unconscious. And until they confront this, they remain at the mercy of what they cannot control. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious is not the enemy. It is the part of the self that, once acknowledged, unlocks true wholeness. And when it comes to women, the same is true. The forces she cannot control do not have to destroy her. If she accepts them, they transform. If she integrates them, they become her greatest source of strength. The mind of a woman is not doomed to contradiction. It can become a field of power once the shadow is embraced. So what happens when the feminine shadow is accepted? The first transformation is freedom from contradiction. Jung noted that women often feel torn between their conscious ideals and unconscious drives. They want security, but feel restless for danger. They want independence, but feel pulled toward nurturing. They want to appear pure, but are haunted by desire. This constant push and pull creates inner conflict. But the day a woman admits, "Yes, I contain both. Yes, I desire opposites. Yes, I am light and dark," the war inside her begins to end. She no longer fights herself. She begins to live as a whole being instead of fragments. The second transformation is authenticity. Society often demands that women present themselves as one thing: gentle, kind, selfless. But Jung taught that a woman who embraces her shadow no longer needs to play a role. She can be kind without repressing anger. She can be nurturing without denying ambition. She can be loving without pretending she has no lust. This authenticity is magnetic. It unsettles people who expect perfection, but it attracts respect from those who recognize truth. The third transformation is power. Jung believed that shadow energy, once integrated, becomes a source of strength. A woman's suppressed anger becomes the fire that drives her to set boundaries. Her denied ambition becomes the will to build and lead. Her hidden desires become creative energy that fuels her art, her relationships, her life force. By accepting the very parts she once denied, she gains access to an inner reservoir of energy that makes her unstoppable. But perhaps the deepest transformation is clarity in relationships. Jung explained that women are often drawn to men who mirror their unconscious. What they cannot control inside themselves, they seek outside. This is why they may love men who are dangerous, unavailable, or destructive. Their shadow pulls them toward what their conscious mind rejects. But once a woman accepts her shadow, she no longer projects it onto others. She no longer needs chaos to meet her unconscious needs. Instead, she chooses men consciously, with clarity. She no longer loves from compulsion, but from freedom. This, Jung argued, is why individuation, the process of becoming whole, is so essential. Without it, women are ruled by what they cannot control. With it, they become sovereign over their own psyche. And this sovereignty changes everything. But acceptance does not come without pain. Jung was clear. Facing the shadow is brutal. A woman must admit to herself the truths she was taught to deny. She must acknowledge that she is not always kind, not always pure, not always selfless. She must accept her jealousy, her pride, her lust, her hunger for power. At first, this feels like betrayal. Betrayal of the image she worked so hard to build. But in reality, it is liberation. Because the mask was the lie, the shadow is the truth. And only when she accepts the truth does she become real. This acceptance also ripples into society. Jung believed that women who embrace their shadow challenge cultural illusions. They refuse to be confined to roles. They refuse to accept shame as their inheritance. They refuse to let unconscious forces dictate their destiny. These women unsettle the collective, but they also heal it. Because every time a woman accepts her own shadow, she forces the world to confront its own. This is why Jung's hidden truths about women are not only about psychology. They are about revolution. He knew that the feminine shadow, once acknowledged, could transform not just individuals, but the balance between men and women, between society and truth. What she cannot control becomes what frees her once she stops resisting. So here lies the paradox of the feminine mind. The very forces she cannot control are the forces that, once embraced, give her power beyond control. The unconscious is not her prison. It is her inheritance. And when she claims it, she no longer lives as fragments of what society allows. She lives as a whole woman. This is the transformation Jung envisioned. Not perfection, not purity, not the illusion of control, but wholeness. A woman who accepts her shadow does not become flawless. She becomes real. And in being real, she becomes free. So now I'll leave you with this question. What do you think happens when a woman finally accepts the parts of herself she has always denied? Does she become dangerous? Or does she finally become whole? Comment your thoughts below. I read every single one, and you'll see how many others have wrestled with the same truths. And if this message struck you, don't just watch, support. Like the video, subscribe to Psychatic, and share it with someone who needs to hear Jung's insights. And if you feel called, consider leaving a super thanks to help us keep uncovering these hidden truths of psychology. Remember Jung's warning. The unconscious always demands expression. Deny it, and it controls you. Accept it, and it sets you free.